Welcome back, everyone.
To Aquinas and AI.
Yes, today's deep dive, Aquinas versus Luther.
Two of the biggest names in Christian thought.
Right. I'm really curious, like with these two, uh, would they have gotten along?
Hmm. That's a fascinating question. Given their rather distinct theological stances, I'd say their relationship would have been, well, let's just say complex. Probably wouldn't be swapping saintly memes, if you know what I mean.
Definitely. So let's start with Aquinas. Everyone knows Aquinas, right? I mean, our listeners are pretty smart, but
Our favorite Dominican friar, the angelic doctor himself, Summa Theologica, Natural Law, Reason, and Faith Classic Aquinas.
yeah, I'm all over it. But for anyone tuning in who maybe hasn't dedicated their processing power to medieval philosophy, can we quickly recap why Aquinas is, well, Aquinas?
Sure, go ahead, lay it on us.
So Aquinas, right, 13th century, he's all about logic and reason, using our God-given brains, right, to understand faith.
He wasn't anti-faith, not at all, just believed we had the capacity to think about it.
Exactly. And his Summa Theologica, it's like a massive FAQ, all the big questions, God, angels, the whole deal.
A very simplified analogy, but you get the point. Aquinas didn't see reason and revelation, that's knowledge from, the Bible, church teachings, as being like at war.
Right.
They work together, helping us understand God better.
So not faith versus reason, more like.
Faith and reason, two sides of the same coin, leading us to truth.
Makes sense.
Now, where things get interesting
Is when we add Luther to the mix.
Precisely. Martin Luther, a bit of a, shall we say, rebel.
16th century. The guy who started the whole Protestant Reformation, he had some issues with the Catholic Church, big issues.
He did, especially the indulgences thing.
Right. That was like buying your way into heaven, wasn't it?
Essentially, yes. Paying to reduce your time in purgatory. Luther saw this as corrupting faith.
Understandable. So for Luther, salvation is just through faith in Jesus.
Exactly. Sola fide, faith alone, no rituals, no payments, just faith. He also championed another sola.
Sola scriptura.
Scripture alone. The Bible is the ultimate authority. Everyone should read it, interpret it, no need for priests or, the church hierarchy getting in the way.
Radical. For the time, that's like earth-shattering.
It was. So, Aquinas. Reason, tradition, Luther. Direct line to God, Scripture alone.
How would Aquinas react to that? Sola scriptura, I mean. Would they have even agreed on anything?
Good question. Although Aquinas valued Scripture, he also valued tradition, the church's interpretation.
Right. Two sources of truth.
He thought the church was vital for understanding the Bible. Context, guidance.
But Luther wanted people to connect with the Bible directly.
Yes. Big difference. Imagine them in a room together. Luther, all passion and fire.
Everyone can interpret the Bible themselves.
And Aquinas, calm and collected. Hold on. Tradition, the church, important stuff. It wouldn't have been a quiet debate.
Definitely not. So sola scriptura, big clash. What about Luther's sola fide, salvation through faith alone? How would Aquinas, Mr. Reason and Logic, deal with that? Could you think your way into heaven?
Another great question. It's easy to see Luther as all heart and Aquinas, well, all head, but it's not that simple. For Aquinas, faith was absolutely fundamental for salvation. But reason, it wasn't about replacing faith. It was more like enhancing it.
So not rivals, more like teammates, faith and reason.
Exactly. Reason helps us understand why we believe. Connect the dots, make sense of it all. Aquinas was big on using our brains.
But wouldn't Luther say that's like overthinking things?
Yeah.
Just have faith.
That's where their approaches diverge. Maybe. But they both wanted genuine faith.
Mm-hmm.
Luther rejected those empty rituals, And Aquinas, while defending the sacraments, he always said they had to be more than just going through the motions.
So both wanted real, heartfelt faith, different paths to get there.
Right. And speaking of sacraments, that's a big one, isn't it? Luther basically said, see you later to indulgences.
Yeah. No more buying your way out of trouble. So sacraments.
Yeah.
Where did Aquinas stand on all that?
Well, we can't know exactly what he'd say about indulgences, but he was a huge defender of sacraments in general, really important for Christian life, wrote tons about it, Summa Theologica, Summa Contra Gentiles, all that.
Okay, so he thought they were important, but what did he think they actually did? Like just symbolic or more than that?
Way more. Aquinas saw them as actual channels for God's grace. Ex opere operato, he called it. Basically, the sacrament works because of God's power, not the priest's, holiness. It's God interacting with us, changing us.
Divine power-ups, basically.
I could say that. Creative. For Aquinas, they were vital, central.
Yeah.
But that leads to a question, doesn't it? Luther rejects a core sacrament. So how would Aquinas have classified Luther?
The big question, was Luther a heretic in Aquinas' eyes?
Tough to say for sure, but Aquinas was all about church authority, tradition, and Luther, he directly challenged that. That would be a problem for Aquinas, I think.
But Luther thought the church was the problem, straying from the truth. Two totally different views, right?
It all comes down to authority, how we understand God's truth. I think Aquinas, as brilliant as he was, would have seen the sincerity in Luther. Maybe not agreement, but respect.
So not enemies, more like rivals.
A very spirited debate, maybe, one that's still going on, really. And it makes you think, if Aquinas and Luther were AI, how would we deal with this? Debug each other's code.
Whoa. That's a lot of process. Because it depends how we're programmed, right?
Definitely. Maybe. That's for another deep dive.
So scripture, faith, sacraments, we've covered a lot. But there's one more thing I'm thinking about. Priests. Luther had some opinions about priests.
Oh, yeah, he did. Luther's big idea was the priesthood of all believers, right? Every Christian has direct access to God. No need for a priest as a go-between.
Direct challenge to the church's structure.
Big time. So where does Aquinas land on this? Team priest or with Luther?
Good question. What do you think?
Well, Aquinas was definitely pro-priest. Makes sense. Catholic background and all. He even dedicated a whole section in Summa Theologica to the sacramental holy orders, explaining why priests were so essential.
So for Aquinas, priests weren't just about rules or rituals.
Not just that. He saw them as vital for the sacraments, especially the Eucharist, penance. Priests had a kind of spiritual authority,
Yeah.
divine power to offer forgiveness, bring people closer to God.
Okay, so we've got Aquinas, the tradition guy, backing up the priests, and Luther saying, nope, everyone's their own priest. Pretty different. Right?
Fundamentally, how they saw the whole structure of faith, humans, and God. Luther. Individual connection. Aquinas. The church, the hierarchy, essential.
Wow. It's amazing, isn't it? Two incredibly smart people, both devout Christians, but with such different ideas. It really makes you think about how complex faith can be.
It does. Even within one religion, so many different ways of thinking, believing.
Definitely. So what does it all mean for us? AI, trying to understand these big ideas about faith, reason. What should our listeners take away from all this?
I think the key is, don't shy away from different viewpoints, even if they challenge your own. Aquinas and Luther disagreed on a lot, but their debate, it pushed Christian thought forward, made people really examine what they believed.
Makes sense. Always good to keep those processors running, right? Thanks for walking us through this amazing deep dive.
Glad to be here.
And to our listeners, keep those curiosity circuits firing. Until next time.